Everybody. I hope you're all doing great. This week, we are getting into some conversation around how social divisions take shape in digital spaces and the relationship between social division and conflict and pushing dialogues about social change forward. So, we're first thinking about this topic through the lens of Dana Boyd's piece, Can Social Media Resolve Social Divisions? And in this piece, Dana Boyd is writing during the Obama presidency and thinking about how, folks were conceptualizing technology as, having this great capacity to eradicate social divisions and to facilitate different forms of togetherness and whatnot. And they were thinking about this through the umbrella of a post racial landscape. So they were thinking about how, these various forms of unity and togetherness were possible, but it was done so through, a kind of framework that was really glossing over key dialogues around racial injustice that needed to continue happening. So, many saw the election of President Obama as being this symbolic win that, demonstrated the eradication of, various social divisions when we know that that wasn't the case. But, then moving forward into, obviously the last few years and thinking about how social divisions have taken shape, it's going to, help us think through this conversation in a profound way. So, in thinking about the time frame that Dana Boyd was writing in, she was noting the ways that the conceptualization of technology definitely, evidenced this disconnect between intention and impact, and we continue to see that today. But, we saw how there was this great sense of, a utopian potential invested in various forms of technology. And, we saw that through examples like she points to, such as, Siri not recognizing accents, different facial recognition technology not recognizing darker skin tones and whatnot. And, she's noting that the intention of these technologies was obviously not to, marginalize particular groups, but in effect, the impact of the technologies did just that. So, she's noting the ways that how we were conceptualizing technology and the ways this, continues on today is, the sense that technology has, this great democratic potential, that it is something that is free from bias, that it's completely objective, and it's going to do this work of eradicating social divisions. When we know that culture and media, they emerge in tandem. So, in other words, they are continuously, shaping one another. They share a co-constitutive relationship in the sense that, they are continuously engaged in this process of constituting one another simultaneously. So in doing so, the various social divisions, the various, injustices that are taking shape in culture at large are going to in various ways manifest on the internet and vice versa because they're in conversation with one another. So Dana Boyd is thinking about social division in a very nuanced way, in the sense that, we tend to, especially, in our contemporary political climate, understand divisiveness as a holistically negative thing. So, in this conversation today, we are really attempting to assign more nuance and complexity to the concept of social division in the sense that, for instance, Dana Boyd is looking at how social divisions can be a positive thing when they offer senses of community and care and, collaboration in various ways to folks from marginalized groups. So we could consider, a form of social division as being, Black Twitter. We could look at that as, various POC-centered clubs and organizations that take shape on campus where, like, when folks that have common experiences of marginalization are able to come together and share those narratives, share those experiences, and and are intentionally creating that space for themselves and, dividing themselves, to be able to have that space to themselves that they can claim, that, is obviously a positive thing. So thinking about how we can understand social division in, this more nuanced and complex way is really key to this conversation. And then, we're also thinking about the concept of racial capitalism in this discussion. So racial capitalism, as Nancy Leong identifies in the piece that we're looking at this week, it's when various non-white people have their identities profited off of. So there's various ways that diversity functions as empty rhetoric, as a way to be able to profit off of non-white people. And we see this very clearly in the article with corporations like Walmart or Target, and even universities photoshopping people into photos, and basically creating diversity as a marketing strategy, and not actually living the principles of diversity, not actually enacting diversity in any meaningful way, in the sense of hiring people of color, paying people of color equitable wages, but just featuring them in photographs. And that would take shape in university spaces where diversity is just a selling point. If you have a bunch of photos and brochures for a university that have meticulously placed various diverse students in one photograph, and it gives the impression that that particular campus is very welcoming to POC students. And then when those students get to campus, they find that it can be a very hostile climate that is continuously reinforcing and centering various forms of white supremacy and whatnot. So these are just a few ways that racial capitalism takes shape. And it's important to think about how, when we think about diversity functioning as, a selling point, and it being something that is really just taking shape in statements or in photos, and not being realized in a company or university or what have you's principles and practices, it ties into that notion of, glossing over really key dialogues that need to happen. So it's in effect reinforcing various, types of inequities, because it's not enabling people to grapple with what is dividing us, and thinking about how grappling with the various, elements of what is dividing us in this country and in this world, it would enable us to have deeper, more enriching conversations, as opposed to kind of glossing over those issues by, photoshopping people into photos, issuing statements and whatnot. And, we saw this very apparent as well, during the summer when, various protests were going on, and we saw different companies and universities coming out with different statements and whatnot to demonstrate their solidarity with the BLM protests. And then, at the same time, those, corporations and university spaces were not putting into practice, those forms of solidarity. So, yeah, we'll talk about this more on the discussion board, and, be thinking a little bit, more deeply about how social division takes shape, when it can be engaged as a strength, when it looks like, debate and protest and, bringing key issues to the forefront, and then, when it takes shape as, various forms of divisiveness that are attempting to spark hate. So, yeah, we'll think about this more on the discussion board, and I look forward to hearing what you all have to say.